In the field of conflict transformation and peace building, there are many concepts which are constantly evolving. You might hear sometimes about conflict prevention, conflict management, conflict resolution, do no harm, and more about conflict sensitivity. Whether you're in the field or not, it's easy to get lost. So today, let's try to understand what conflict sensitivity means. Imagine a region affected by interreligious conflict. Violence reaches indescribable levels. Civilians on all sides are forced to flee the combat zones. These internally displaced persons find themselves in a camp where they lack everything. Faced by these humanitarian crises, whether you're the government or a religious institution or a national or international NGO, you could come in urgently and try to provide support, to provide assistance, such as water, food, medication. This is what is known as the humanitarian action. Now, let's look at another scenario. We could have the interreligious violence in the area decreasing, de-escalating in a way that allow long-term interventions to support agriculture, education, health. This is what is known as a development action. So what's the problem, you may ask? Because we have very well-meaning people and organizations coming to help. The problem is that humanitarian development or any other action that comes to intervene in a region which is affected by conflict finds itself involved in that conflict. Aid brings opportunities for local populations, but these local people are opposed to each other. In our example, it was an interreligious conflict, meaning that people are opposed around their religious beliefs. Aid gives jobs. Aid buys for local suppliers. Aid workers rent real estate, they build relationship, they eat in restaurant, they interact with local people and leaders. Even without intending it, a humanitarian or development intervention will therefore influence the balance of power, increasing the power of some and perhaps reducing that of others. Sometimes it's the groups in the conflict who may have the impression that these external actors have chosen their side in the conflict which exists between them. And so, unintentionally, if left unchecked, humanitarian or development aid can aggravate existing tensions or create new conflicts. Conflict sensitivity means taking the necessary precautions to prevent this from happening. Conflict sensitivity means, first, understanding the conflict context in which we intervene, and then monitoring how the intervention interacts and influences these dynamics. In the end, the idea is to do everything possible to minimize the negative impact we can have on the conflict, and if possible, try to have a positive impact instead. To be clear, it doesn't mean that the humanitarian or development actors find themselves in charge of resolving the conflict they have found in the region. But if they do it right, they can deliver the assistance, but with an approach that, rather than exacerbating the tensions, may even help to decrease them. So how do we do it? It's search for common ground when we work with humanitarian or development or any other actors in conflict-affected zones. We help them to do their work, but in a conflict-sensitive way. So what do we do concretely? First, we help them to understand the context, but from an angle of conflict dynamics. Over and above the needs analysis inherent to their mission, we analyze for and with our partners existing divisions, their causes, their consequences, and the positioning of different actors. We also analyze the levels of influence and power. We then monitor the evolution of this situation through the life of the project. 2, we train all implementing staff in conflict sensitivity. When each team member understands that their attitudes and behaviors, as well as their associates and operational choices in the area, can have a negative impact on the conflict, it becomes possible to prevent this from happening. 3, we help our partners to set up mechanisms for consultation, transparency, and accountability. An important issue is to ensure that programmatic and operational choices are not perceived as favoring one group against another one. We help our partners choose sites, identify local stakeholders, recruit staff and suppliers in a transparent way to avoid any misinterpretation. Sometimes we use our media programming expertise to disseminate the right information about the project and create channels of exchange between the implementation teams and the target populations. This helps reduce the spread of rumors, for example, in the region. 4, we help our partners to set up feedback mechanisms. Conflict sensitivity programming is also the one that enables community members to convey their feelings, criticisms, and proposals to program managers. 5, we encourage and support reflection and adaptation. When feedback from the communities shows that an action or a way of doing things may create or exacerbate tensions, we need to be creative and find an approach that achieves the desired result while avoiding the identified risk. 6, we help our partners carry out a conflict-sensitive evaluation of the project. When we evaluate the successes and failures of a project implemented in a conflict-affected zone, we assess its performances according to its theme, humanitarian or development, but we also evaluate the effect it has had on the conflict dynamic. If the effect is positive, it's even better, because the project can count it as an unexpected result. So that's it for today. I hope conflict sensitivity seems a little bit clearer to you now.